Welcome to Connect to Joy. Your host, Carol DeChaine, is an intuitive spiritual guide for practical matters and Marconic multidimensional energy practitioner. Her quest is to help you realize new possibilities, discover and release what holds you back, and enable you to manifest an inspired life filled with joy. Join us on this journey of transformation. Now, here's your host, Carol DeChaine.
Today, I titled this No Choice But to Change. Now what? So this is the type of change that is being thrust upon you by somebody, or either circumstances or a person. It's the kind of change that is seemingly inevitable, whether it's divorce or death, a job transfer or a layoff. These are changes that sometimes you can make a decision. Well, you can always make a decision how you react to it, but you might or might not be able to make a decision on, like death, you can't really make a decision, it just happens. Divorce, you may or may not be able to change. Job transfers, layoffs, all those things, how do you react to them? And how do you move forward? Most people are not looking for change. But when it's thrust upon you, do you embrace it? Or do you fight like, as my mother said, H-E double toothpicks? You fight like hell to not have it happen to you. What do you do? So today, we're going to look at how you respond to change right now. The Kubler Ross model for change, so you can understand the steps that you may go through. We're going to look at resisting change and why you may get stuck. 10 ways to release the resistance to change to help you move forward. And a short guided meditation about one specific change that you're facing. So if you know what that is, or maybe you know what it was at some point, you can look back and see how you might have been able to shift. And if you've already gone through the change and you're still fighting it, this will help you as well. So first, how do you look at change when it happens to you? Do you look at it as a friend and you embrace it, go, yes, I can do this? Or do you pretty much look at it as a foe and fight it kicking and screaming all the way down the line? Or maybe you're somewhere in the middle. Usually, for me at least, it depends on the circumstances. Is this a big change or is this a small change? Is it something I judge as good for me or bad for me? So obviously, a big change I think of as bad for me, I'm going to be fighting a whole lot more than something that's smaller and I think might be good. So the bad ones we might judge as bad might include death, being laid off from a job, an eviction from where you're living, someone asking for a divorce, maybe even a child going off to college or not going off when you want them to, getting into trouble. These are things we might judge as not being good. On the other hand, the things we judge as changes that maybe are good is maybe a new romance. Maybe someone asks you to marry them. A new job. A job transfer can also be good, depending on how you embrace it or you don't. And there are things that sometimes can be good on hindsight, right? Things that are being when you're laid off or you're divorcing or something. And even death, and I hesitate to say this only because we're kind of conditioned to think of as death as a bad thing. But sometimes it's a blessing when someone is so ill. And you might feel guilty if you think it's a blessing. So that's okay if you do. You need to be where you need to be. But I'm just saying that when my dad died, he had Alzheimer's. And he had been in bad shape for a long time. But when he didn't really know who he was anymore, he was still functioning, mostly in a wheelchair, but he was still kind of functioning. But it didn't mean that he was himself. And I knew he hated where he was at. Because he told me as he was going through it that the one thing he was afraid of was losing his mind. And he said that towards the beginning of its Alzheimer's. So when he got to the point where he didn't eat anymore and he was just laying there, after he passed away, I felt really alone because I was the only one there that went to see him. My mom and my sister weren't nearby. And I thought, even though I feel alone, he's going to be so much happier gone, if you believe in another lifetime, because he was not himself for a couple of years. And I knew how much he was hating that. So because of that, in a way, looking back, that death was a blessing. But it was still a huge change and it was hard to go through. So how we approach the changes that are just thrust upon us help us experience the changes. We can experience them differently. I'm going to say that again. How we approach the changes that are thrust upon us help us experience the changes differently. We can fight the changes. We can say, no, I'm afraid. I don't know this future. I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe you're afraid because this unknown future has to do with a job transfer. And you say, no, if we go, what if we hate this new city? What if after all this work to get from here to there, I hate my new boss? Or the job is awful in this new location? What if my spouse had to drop their job and come with me and then try and find another one? What if my kids hate me because they're leaving their friends behind and they're really mad at me and they're being nasty kids because they don't want to move? They're upset. All that fear of the unknown future about what might happen might be why you fight it, right? Because your mind wants to know what's happening and wants to know that you're safe. Your survival is not depending on this change. It wants to be comfortable and have security, know what to expect, and it really will fight for that right. It doesn't want to shift. Because that Murphy's Law thing, that change equals disaster equals worst case scenario, isn't true most of the time, but it's kind of easy to get stuck in the loop of believing that it could be. Because that fear could be not only a failure, but that you're taking too big of a risk in taking this change on if you have any choice whatsoever. Even though you don't want to go through the change, and maybe you have to, you still are afraid and you don't want to take that risk even though it's already happening. You might get angry or uncomfortable. You might fight it by feeling exhausted and having your brain going in circles trying to figure out how to get out of it. You might give up and say, I can't do anything. I'm done. I don't know what to do. Or you might give in if someone's asking you to do something that feels like you have no choice. The other option besides fighting it is going with the flow. If you don't fight it, you might be able to see something different. You might find ways to shift the change, to adjust your attitude, or the options might look a little different. You might see other possibilities if you don't resist the change. You might find a silver lining. You might even see the best case scenario when you're looking at it. And I know hindsight is 20/20, but you might even be able to see some of the good now, even if you don't think you can. And if you look at this change you're facing and you don't want to go through it, even though you're already kind of in the middle of it, why don't you? What is it, honestly, that you don't like about this change? Because this is a big hint. It isn't the change you don't want to do. It's the fear of how you or how your life will change because of it. So it's basically fear of the unknown. Will you be different if you have to go through this change? If you have to go through this divorce or this death, or how your life will change if you go through a layoff or maybe a job transfer or something? How will your life change? So it isn't the change you're afraid of. It's the fear of how you or how your life will change because of it. I want to get into the Kubler Ross Change Curve now. There are 5 stages, similar to the one that most people know about the grieving stages. In case you don't know, Elizabeth Kubler Ross was a psychiatrist. She has many books out. I've read one a really long time ago about death and dying, and that's, I think, where she talks about her stages of grief. This is the stages of the changes, the change curve. The stages are denial or shock, kind of like the death one. That's also denial and shock. So you have fear. You're stuck in your head. Your emotions may be overwhelming. And you can't move forward. And the denial is just that you don't want to admit it's happening, especially if somebody asks for a divorce or they break up with you. It's when stalkers happen because you're in denial that it's happened. Perhaps you don't want to admit that you've been laid off, and so you don't even tell your family about it for a while. There's also resistance, of course. That's the second stage. The anger or the depression, this feeling that you refuse to address it. You see it's happening, but you are not going to address it. So you don't in any kind of healthy way at all. You just react to it. And this resistance is you're fighting this change the entire way. You definitely have no forward movement on that. You're just stuck. Just like when you're stuck in the first stage of denial and shock. So first you deny it, and then you resist it, maybe with all your might, maybe just a little bit. And then the third stage is that you're bargaining. How can you make the change different than what it is? So you talk to people and you search for it. You try and figure out how maybe you can stop the divorce from happening. You bargain with God, say, if I act this way, maybe that way. When people are abused and their abuser says, I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again. They're bargaining. They're saying, I won't, I promise I won't do it again. They're trying to make you come back to them if you've left. So it's denial, resistance, bargaining to change it without actually doing anything. And then there's exploration. When you start moving forward, you're trying to make the change be different by actually figuring out how you might make it work for you. Maybe you're finding new opportunities or a different way to engage in the change. You're saying, if I'm laid off, maybe there's another job out there that's better for me. Maybe this isn't the one I wanted anyway because I haven't liked it for years. Maybe this was the only way to get me off my duff and actually change jobs. So then you start looking at other opportunities, other people you talk to about that sort of thing. How do you move forward? How do you make the change work? And then the fifth stage is actually moving forward, making that commitment to the change and allowing it to work. Now, you may not go through all of these stages. All 5 of these stages, you may skip shock to right to anger. You might skip the denial and just go, I am not doing this change, right to resistance. Or you might skip the bargaining and trying to make the change be different without going straight to looking for new opportunities. Or they could be really quick that you move through them. Or, of course, you could stay totally stuck in this particular problem. Most people need help getting to move through their resistance. Because the resisting is the part that could take the longest when you swear this isn't happening. You're saying, how do I protect myself from these possible outcomes that are scary, that you don't know if you're going to be able to handle or not? It's that fear of the unknown that I was talking about. So ask yourself, what am I resisting? When you hear, what am I resisting to whatever change you're facing, it's usually a fear of the unknown. You don't know. But is it something you can control, or is it something you can't control? If you can't control what you're afraid of, mindset then comes into a big play. It's how you perceive what you're going through. Deciding if you can, find the silver lining. If you can't control it, you simply have to say, okay, then, I can't do particularly anything, so I am going to go ahead and look for the best, look for the silver lining, find ways that I can make this work for me. Even if I can't really control the outcome, I'm going to find a way to shift my perspective on it. But if you can control it, this outcome or this thing you're resisting, maybe you can do research to help you get more information. Maybe you can ask someone if you don't know of anyone that has been through it already. You can find a mentor that you can call or contact and ask them for information on how they got through something, or ask for help on how they dealt with what you're going through. Make sure you talk to your spouse if you're going through something that's huge that they need to know about so that they can really realize that you are going through something and you're not keeping it closed up inside of yourself, because they'll have more patience, more understanding if you're willing to talk to them. Maybe you talk to a life coach or someone like a therapist or a minister to help you see that you can release this concern about the change. The thing that you can do the most is just to accept that you have this resistance, to realize, yes, I'm fighting it, and then figure out why. But accept it. Because if you give into the resistance and say, it's okay, I'm going to allow this in. I see that I'm doing this. I see that I'm refusing to address this in a healthy way. If you embrace it, you won't be playing that tug of war. You won't be going, yes, I can handle this. No, I can't. Yes, I can. No, I can't. Yes, I'm scared. Yes, I'm angry. Yes, I'm whatever it is. It's okay to feel that way. And I'm going to continue now with the mindset that we've been talking about, how you approach the change. If we're talking about releasing the resistance to change, you may have a whole new experience with change if you actually release it. I've said this before, I'm going to say it one more time. It's not the fear you have of the change. You're resisting the loss of who you are or what you may have if this change goes through. I mentioned a job possible move or a layoff. Maybe you have death or being asked for divorce or somebody broke up with you. Maybe you're going through bankruptcy. Whatever this change is, what you're releasing is probably also the fear of failure, because failure and success are both part of life. So if you learn not to be afraid of that failure or people judging you for having any kind of what you perceive to be failure or what they perceive to be failure, these failures can help you learn and grow and how to not only be a better person, but how to make your business work better, how to make your whole life work better. Because then you'll know what you don't want, right? It's like dating 5 or 6 frogs, as they say, before you meet the prince or princess, because you're looking at them going, I don't want that. I don't want this. I don't want that. And those are ways that you can learn as well. By the way, failure, it's not guaranteed. You might win in your estimation when you make that change, even if it's a change that doesn't seem like something you truly want. So those 8 ways to release the resistance and the fear I promised you, I'm going to go into right now. First, and if you know me and listen to me at all, you'll know what the first one is. Yes, indeed, it's raise your vibration, which means you lift up into a healthier place for you. You find more joy, more love, more peace about how you're facing this change. And you might do that by being around more positive people. You might read something that uplifts you. Use affirmations. That might be what you try. You might try meditating or praying to release that resistance. Gratitude for what you have and even for the change will help raise your vibration. You can do energy work that will shake off some of the older, lower fears or anger or depression. Marconics does that, and that's something that I use. So those are different ways you can raise your vibration. A second way that you can release the resistance or fear is if you feel that you're not good enough for this change. You might want to go to school to learn or to grow however you need to learn in order to feel like you're okay with this change. Maybe the change for the new job, one of the fears is that, and the reason you're resisting it is that it's a promotion and you don't think you have nearly enough information or enough schooling to handle it. So maybe you go back to school or you find a way to learn things that you need so that you feel good enough and then the change is great. You can embrace it. You can also look at the positive aspects of the change because there is always a positive aspect. You can embrace new ideas that come up or new experiences that you might get because of it. Think of the positive things that may come from it because no matter how dark the change may look to you, there is always positive things that can come from it, which you may not see for 20 years. But honestly, there are things you can embrace right now as possible outcomes. You can also, for that matter, number 4, change your belief about change in general. You can think, change. Instead of, oh my God, I don't want to go there, to, change is fun. Change is good. So that can take a little work, but if you change your belief about change, if you adjust it, massage it a little, allow it to be more fun, find change that is fun for you, you can start allowing yourself to not maybe freak out so much when you have a change happen to you. Number 5 is to look for the best from the change as you face it. As you're going through it, find each thing that you can be grateful for as you go through it. Rather than just look at the long-term positive aspects that might happen, look at it as you face it. Because there's always something to be grateful for. There's always something good. Number 6 on how to shift through this resistance to change is to visualize the change going great and see yourself coming out the other side of the change, grateful, happy, changed in the best way possible. Visualize that change. That alone will help your subconscious start releasing the fear and the resistance. Number 7 that you can try is to ask yourself, who would you have to be to make the change work? So maybe if you look at it from a third-party perspective, if you can't do this yourself, or from already having achieved it, if you step back and you go, I'm here a year later, this change has happened, and it was amazing. In order to make this work, I feel more maybe strong in who I am. I love myself more. I feel like I have more talents and gifts than I thought. So whoever you will become, if it works out well, think of that person and take those attributes back into your current self. Start living that way. Feel what it would feel like if you loved yourself more. If you were more sure about maybe your decisions, which is something maybe you thought you needed to be, if you were in the future, having gone through it. And number 8 is choose to believe the change is for your highest good, that there's a reason behind it. So even though you're in the middle of the change, feel it and go, okay, this is for my highest good, then there's a reason for this. I can embrace this. I can shift and grow because of it. However the outcome is in the long run, I'm going to be better because of it, or it wouldn't have happened. And those are the 8 ways that you can release the resistance to the change that you're feeling. And now, if you aren't comfy already, please go ahead and sit down and get ready for a guided meditation. If you're driving, listen and see if there are things that come to mind anyway, even though we don't want you closing your eyes or getting into too deep of a meditation. Maybe ignore the feeling at the beginning of me bringing it in. Don't go as deep. But if you are sitting and you are comfortable and you can do it right now, by all means, get as comfortable as you can and think of one change that you're either in the middle of dealing with or one that you already, either you're facing it right now and you are just not happy with it, or you've gone through it, but you're still not done dealing with the resistance to it. If you can do that, or one you've already completed but you want to look at just to be on the safe side, you can do that as well. It can be small or it can be large change. It doesn't matter. But it's one that's kind of thrust upon you. So, how do you feel about it now? And then the other question to ask yourself is, do I know specifically what I'm resisting about the change? Okay, now we're going to get more comfortable and we're going to start working our way down into this peaceful place. Oh, take a deep breath and allow the cares of the day to start falling away. Let everything go, including the worry about this change right now. Take another breath and feel all of those worries simply disintegrating, knowing that you can always pick them up again if you want to on your way back up and out. Take another breath and feel your mind relaxing and your whole body just sliding into comfort and feeling relaxed. And one more breath, feeling like you are a nice puddle of calmness, peacefulness, and ready to look at the change, feeling peaceful and safe and without a worry. Look at the change now. See a picture of what it is in your mind's eye. Do you see what you need to go through or what is being thrust upon you? Or perhaps what has already happened that you haven't finished dealing with yet? What do you feel? What do you see yourself feeling if you feel safe and apart? What do you normally feel? Do you feel fear or anger? Or maybe you're depressed about this change. It's just a feeling. You're safe. But what do you feel about this change now? And once you feel this feeling, decide to step back. Pull away. See this through someone else's eyes. See the change. And look at what you are resisting. From this other person's eyes, look down and say, oh, look, there's the change, and there she is, or he is. What is this person resisting? What do you see yourself looking like? Does the resistance feel like something specific? Does it look like something specific? If it just feels like a negative, heavy feeling, and you don't know what you're resisting, ask for the information. What am I resisting here? What about this change seems so difficult for me? And then when you can see what it is, or if you say, I don't know, let it go. Feel like you are embracing that resistance. Feel like it's okay. It doesn't matter if I'm fighting this change, but embrace what you're fighting. Embrace that resistance and watch it melt away once you embrace it. If you don't know what you're resisting or it's not gone, put the worst case scenario on top of the picture. How awful would your life be like, or would you be, if you had to go through this change? What is the worst case scenario for you? Look at it. Feel through it. Feel how awful that would be. And then realize that this is highly unlikely. Look at this picture that you've just put out there and realize it is more than likely a mirage. It's not something, this worst case scenario, that's going to happen. You don't need to worry about something that is probably not going to happen. So watch this mirage wink out and vanish just like mirages do on the desert when they aren't real. Breathe through this. Allow it to be gone. And then see the change as it appears again. Has it shifted at all? Now, where the change is, see a best case scenario. What is the best that could possibly happen? Put it on like a coat. Put on this best case scenario to this change and go, wow, this feels amazing. This best case scenario, this thing I maybe didn't think of before, is possible. Breathe it in. Embrace this choice and this mindset. Breathe it in. Feel gratitude that this is a possibility. Feel at peace that this is a possibility. And ask for the change and the resistance to it to shift however it needs to, so that this change is for your highest good. So watch this change adjust a little bit. Look at it, feeling relaxed, feeling safe, and look at this change and see if it morphs a little bit into something a little different. See how it can shift so that it's in your highest and your best interests. Allow yourself to feel comfortable, at rest, and feeling safe. Feel at peace with this change. Feel good. Feel ready to move forward. Feel ready to move out of this resistance because you have embraced the power of the choices you have, the power of gratitude, of peace, and of shifting this mindset so that you can embrace the choice in a safer way. Now, as you come back, breathe and allow you to take this feeling in. Feel this change to be in a better place than you thought. And breathe again, feeling your mind coming back into your current moment, feeling your body, feeling it all the way through your toes. Keep breathing, becoming more and more aware of your surroundings, ready to take on whatever this change is. Breathing again to be there fully present and ready to go. Wide awake. How do you feel about this change? You just went through a meditation that I guided you to help you embrace any resistance you have to this change, to see that there is some positiveness that can come from this. So my question for you is, how do you feel now? How do you feel about the change? If you feel like you've gotten a little lighter, maybe a little more direction, but you need to listen to it again, of course, go back and you can listen to this on demand anytime you need. You can fast forward, I was going to say, but you can flip over to that part. Go ahead and go right back into the meditation and do it again, because you're going to feel a bit different each time about the change. You should feel lighter and start getting maybe some good ideas on how to either shift the change or shift how you react to the change. It's not always necessary to figure out what you're resisting. That's one of the questions I get. How do I figure out what I'm resisting? You don't always need to figure it out, because sometimes you can just release the resistance itself. And as you release the push-me-pull-you feeling you have about this change, sometimes it'll just you'll become aware of what you're actually resisting. And sometimes it's like, that's it? That's all I'm resisting? Well, you won't say stupid, but you're going, that's not necessary. I don't need to do that. I'm okay. And other times it's something that you go, oh, this is something I've always been afraid of, something I've always had trouble with. But it may not be obvious that you do. And also, I want to mention that some people wander off in regular meditation. I do that as well. If there's too much space in between speaking, I'm gone. I'm not sure I'm sleeping or if I'm just in a better place with my mind being floating around somewhere, but it's okay. You will get what you need to get, even if you wander off. But if you go back and you listen and you find a time when maybe it might be a better time of the day for you where you don't want to take a nap, that also you can try, because guided meditations or visualizations are something that you don't always need to be fully present for, but if you are, you may end up going deeper. Whatever you need is right. You don't need to worry about it. I wanted to go over one more time the Kubler Ross model for change so that you can realize where you are when you're in these stages, because if you're in shock or depression, you may not even realize it. But I wanted to mention again, so the change curve has to do with 3 parts where you're not moving forward and 2 parts where you are. So you kind of get over this hill at one point. So first, the denial and the shock of this change that may be happening to you, where you don't move forward, you're stuck, you can't believe it's happening, and you don't even want to admit it's there. You can't move forward. The second stage is the resistance, where you just don't want to address it at all. I mean, in a healthy way, let alone at all. You're in anger or depression. You just aren't willing. But you're beyond the shock phase. You see it's there, but you're not willing to address it at all. You just aren't willing, because it's not a good change for you as far as you're concerned. You've judged it bad. And then the third one, where you start to go over the hill and maybe you're starting to make a change, is when you start bargaining. You're saying, this doesn't have to happen, does it? You won't divorce me if I'm nicer to you, or maybe if I do this or I do that. You're trying to bargain, but you're not really moving forward yet, because you're trying to make the change different without really moving forward. The fourth step might be exploration, where you actually engage in new opportunities to move forward. How to make the change work for you is when you're starting to embrace that resistance if you had it and starting to say, no, I can do this anyway. I'm strong enough. I'm powerful enough. I can make these choices. And then after that, you have the really moving forward stage of making a commitment and moving forward in ways that will work for you. The biggest stage, shock is there. Some people, especially going through grief, will stay stuck there for a long time, because they just can't move over through the shock and the denial that something happens until they get to the anger area, because it's very similar to the stages of grief in those first 2 areas. But the resistance seems to be something that we fight. We don't allow something to be good. We play a tug of war sometimes with people or with the options that are not there for the change, because we want to be able to control our lives, right? Most people want to control their lives. Even if you don't say, I want to control my life, you don't want to be out of control necessarily. Even someone going down the ski slope at however many miles an hour they can when they're hot dogging down the ski slope, they love the feeling of recklessness and maybe being free, but they still kind of feel like they're in control. If they thought they were going to die because they were going down the hill, they may not be willing to do it. So what are you resisting? That's a really good question to ask yourself. So this change is there. What are you resisting? And if you learn nothing else from listening to me today, I hope that you'll remember that big thing about what you're resisting. That you're not resisting the change itself, but you're resisting the loss of who you are or what you have because you think you're going to be different and you won't like it. You think what you have is going to be lost or it's going to change so much, impact you that you're going to hate your life. You're not going to want it. But even if you fail, it's okay. It is part of life. Both of them are failure and success. You don't need to embrace the failure so much, but you need to know at least that it will help you learn and grow if you're willing to let it. You need to realize that it's okay. You're an okay person. You have not failed, not in the long picture of it. It's okay to do what you perceive as failure in a specific area of your life because then you'll realize, I don't like this. This is not what I want to be. This is not what I want. You can learn. You can grow. You can be a better person. You can find and make better choices once you realize what you don't like, right? So when this change is thrust upon you, you can get rid of this resistance by, as I said, those 8 ways, raising your vibration. If you feel you're not good enough, you can try more school or learning that you need in order to work through what you want. You can look at the positive aspects of the change, like maybe what they'll bring you in the future. You can look at the best parts of the change as you face it step by step. You can change your belief about change. You can decide that change is fun, that it's good, that it'll bring you great things. Changing your limiting belief is a huge step. You can also visualize the change as going great and seeing yourself on the other side of the change, grateful and happy. And you can choose to believe that change is for your highest good, that there's a reason for it. And lastly, you can look at yourself on the other side of the change and say, if I was here already, who would I have to be? Would I have to be more loving, more forgiving of myself? What would I have to be as a being to have made it to the other side successfully? And take on those characteristics now. Choose to be more loving of yourself now if that's what you need to do. Whatever you decide to do, change can be made in baby steps on how you shift your mindset. Life is really just too precious and really too short in this lifetime to waste if you're stuck and you're fighting change. You need to find a way to embrace it, to choose whatever makes your life fuller or richer and really worth living. It's the least you can do for yourself. Because if you feel overwhelmed and you feel like you're spinning and you can't do it yourself, you really do have a lot of tools you can use, including talking to mentors or a life coach or your minister or friends. You shouldn't have a fear of reaching out because you deserve the help if you need it. You can also use those other types of tools to help you get through change. You can do more meditation, do more centering and focusing, and anything else that you need in order to get from here to there. You need to be what you need to be for you to make those changes that you feel are best for you.
Thank you for listening to Connect to Joy. If you love the show, make sure you rate, review, and share this podcast. And subscribe so you never miss an episode. Contact the host, Carol DeChaine, with questions and comments, ideas for future episodes, or if you would like to become a guest. And remember, transformation is a journey and not an end destination. So be kind to yourself, because you are already enough to have the joyful, limitless life that you desire.